So hello, everybody, and welcome to Montgomery Women's program about, oh goodness, I forgot the title. The Montgomery Women's program about domestic violence and support, prevention, and everything else surrounding that. This is our first recorded virtual program, so we're working through glitches, but at this point, everybody's pretty much used to Zoom, even though you've never heard of it before, like last month. So welcome, and our moderator today is Debbie Feinstein, and Debbie has been wonderful in organizing our panelists, and she's deeply involved in the initiatives involving domestic violence in the county. So that's why she was the perfect program puller together for this. And so for all the work you've done, thank you. And I'm going to turn this over to you to introduce our panelists.
Thank you so much, Sylvia, and thank you to all of you for joining us today in this virtual format. So as Sylvia indicated, for those of you that I don't know, my name is Debbie Feinstein, and my day job is Chief of the Special Victims Division at the Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office. So my division is responsible for the prosecution of cases in the county involving domestic violence, sexual assault, elder abuse, human trafficking, child abuse, child exploitation, child kidnapping, lots of fun cocktail party conversation stoppers. I feel honored today to have the opportunity to introduce some of my colleagues to you. I participate in a number of different collaborative groups that are working together in the county to prevent domestic violence and sexual assault. I chair the Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, and I'm a member of the Sexual Assault Response Team, which Rafiah and Jessica, who are on the call, who are on the Zoom, are the chairs of. So I'm going to give you a little background about each of our speakers, and then format-wise, each of them are going to offer some opening remarks, and then we'll open it up for questions after that. I wanted to let you know that one of our announced panelists was Sergeant Jason Baum. Unfortunately, for many reasons, unfortunately, he's out on a call right now doing an active investigation. So he is going to be unable to join us. So let me first introduce Tom Manion. He is the director of the Family Justice Center. He wears many other hats, including Vice Chair of the Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, Vice Chair of the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Team, among many others. And welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
Next, I'll introduce to you Rafiah Prince, and she is, it's actually Dr. Rafiah Prince. She is the supervisory therapist at the Victim Assistance and Sexual Assault Program. That is a program through the Montgomery County Health and Human Services Department. And Victim Assistance and Sexual Assault Program actually goes by the acronym VASAP, for those of you that may have heard of it and accessed their services before. It's really the go-to place in the county for victims of sexual assault. Lastly, oh, there's Rafiah. And lastly, I'll introduce to you Jessica Volz, also a doctor, Dr. Jessica Volz. She has many initial. She is the clinical nurse manager and forensic nurse practitioner for the forensic medical unit at Adventist Healthcare Shady Grove Medical Center. And she'll tell you more about what she does on a day-to-day basis. But she really supervises the medical piece for all of the forensic work that we do with victims of sexual assault and domestic violence, and she'll share that with you in a few moments. In terms of my opening remarks, I'm going to share with you, I think I can do this. I'm going to share with you on the screen a quick, actually I'm having trouble, but I will go back to it in a moment. I'm just going to fill you in quickly. I'm hoping that many of you have the opportunity to see either on social media or on a website or through other means a campaign that launched in the county last week. It's a prevention campaign around all types of family violence and violence that may be occurring in the home. And the campaign has a simple message. Do you feel unsafe at home? Are you concerned about a loved one or a neighbor? Free help is available. And the purpose of the campaign is to let our community members know that all of the resources are still here, they're safe to access, and that the services are being made available in appropriate means given the situation that we're in with the health emergency. And again, my colleagues will speak to that a little bit more. When I have a chance, and I'll figure out how to do this in a moment. Let me see if, you know what, I think I can share my screen. Apologize.
I have everyone, all of you, able to share screens. And I can't get to
you know what, I will come back to this later, but I just want to, and I'll figure it out while some of the others are speaking. I wanted to just share with you the information, but all of the information that that is related to the campaign can be found on the Family Justice Center website. And there's a lot of other information, links, attachments, information sheets on all sorts of different types of issues that may be occurring in the home: elder abuse, sexual assault, child abuse, as well as intimate partner violence. And with that introduction, I'm going to turn it over first to my colleague, Tom Manion, to talk to you a little bit about intimate partner violence, the services that are available, prevention, and some issues specifically related to what's happening now in the time of COVID-19. Thanks, Tom.
Great, thank you, Debbie. And thank you for everyone who's joining us today. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. Again, as Debbie said, my name is Tom Manion. I am the director of the Montgomery County Family Justice Center. I've been the director there for about the past 5 years. Prior to coming to the Family Justice Center, I got my master's degree in forensic psychology, and I did work for a number of years in suicide prevention. So like Debbie, all of my jobs have been pretty depressing and do not go well at cocktail parties. So I'm here to talk to you a bit today about how Montgomery County responds to domestic violence, and a little bit about domestic violence in general, specifically intimate partner violence. I'm also going to go into a little bit of information about how these services and how our response has changed, and how a lot of things have stayed the same during the COVID-19 public health crisis. So just to kind of open it up to, so we're all on the same page.
It was an effort that started in the...
I wanted to talk about what I mean when I say domestic violence. So when I talk about domestic violence, I'm referring specifically for my part of the presentation to intimate partner violence. So that is any type of violence that occurs within a relationship between one or more current or former intimate partners. Some people think that this just has to be people who are living together or people who are married, and that's not the case. In the state of Maryland, we define this intimate relationship as current or former spouses, current or former dating relationships, anyone who has children in common, anyone who's had a sexual relationship within the past year. So we're not just talking about relationships where the people are married or live together. There are a lot of different types of relationships that fall under that intimate partner umbrella. Now, about this issue of intimate partner violence or intimate partner abuse. It's one singular issue, but it's one issue that's made up of a lot of different problems. There are so many different factors at play, so many different issues at play, and so many different solutions that need to be implemented in order to address the entirety of the concern. Someone is being abused, every facet of their life is impacted in some way or another. The hallmarks of an intimate partner violence situation are power, manipulation, and control. And these can manifest themselves in so many different ways. It might be through physical violence. It could be through sexual assault or sexual coercion, financial abuse, financial control, stalking or abuse through technology, or tracking location services and stalking. It can manifest itself in so many different ways, and often it manifests itself in multiple ways, all in one situation. So again, there's so many different factors at play that there are a lot of different solutions that need to go into solving any individual victim's problems. And that's really the basis behind the Family Justice Center model and how our model of service delivery really began. This whole idea was thought up in San Diego in the early 2000s. In Montgomery County, our center opened in about 2009. We were the first center of our kind in really in the entire geographic area, in this part of the country. Since we opened in 2009, we've served more than 12,000 people. And many of those individuals end up returning for additional services. Not because they're being re-victimized necessarily, but because we offer such a wide array of services that are appropriate for different points within the healing process, that they can return to us again and again and again for different services as they continue on their journey to a safer life. Now, for our center, there are three kind of hallmarks that I like to talk about when talking about the Montgomery County Family Justice Center. The first is no cost. Any service that we provide is provided free of charge. No money is ever exchanged. The second hallmark that I want to talk about is accessibility. It is so incredibly important. You know, in Montgomery County, we live in such a large and diverse county. We've got over 1 million people, and many people are from an immigrant community. Many may not speak English as their first language, or many may not have fluency in English at all. So we have a very large, very diverse county, and we need to make sure, because we know that domestic violence impacts all individuals regardless of age, race, ethnicity, immigration status, socioeconomic status. We know it impacts all these people across the board, regardless of any of these issues. So we need to make sure we're accessible to the entire county. And the Family Justice Center does this really well to make ourselves accessible. My team, I supervise a team of 2 managers and 8 client assistants or victim assistants. More than half of my team is bilingual in English and Spanish. Obviously, the second most common language spoken in our county is Spanish. So half of my team is bilingual. And we also have access to a language line, so that if you're working with someone who doesn't necessarily speak your language, we can call the language line, and that instantaneous interpretation happens right over the phone. This is so incredibly important because my philosophy and our values here at the Family Justice Center is that when people are talking to us, they're speaking to us about these issues that are so incredibly personal and so difficult to talk about emotionally. And many of the people that we're talking to have never spoken these words out loud before. And so it would simply not be fair for us to ask them to translate these words into English in order to tell them to us, in order to report them to us. So it's very important to us that we remain accessible, no matter what language anyone speaks. Going off of that, we also do not ask or inquire about immigration status. In fact, we have service providers on site for folks who do have some type of immigration issue. If they are interested in receiving services or legal advice about their immigration status or applying for legal status, we can actually help them to do that. But it's certainly not a barrier to our services, and it's not something we ask about. So people can feel safe to come to us. The third hallmark I want to talk about is that we are client focused. This is so incredibly important in any type of intimate partner violence or domestic violence or abuse situation or service provider, because someone who has been a victim of intimate partner abuse has been manipulated, controlled, and hurt in so many different ways. And they're all coming to us at different stages in their process and in their journey. Some people come to us and they're ready. They want to talk to the police. They want to get a protective order. They want to leave immediately. And they have a great support system behind them, and they're ready to go. And that's fantastic. Some people, though, they're not there yet. They're still in an active abuse situation. They're afraid to go. They're not ready to move forward with any civil or criminal legal action, but they just want to talk about their safety, or they want to talk about their situation. Some people call us and they say, I don't actually think I'm a victim of abuse, but my friend gave me this phone number. And I just want to talk to somebody. So we really have to meet people where they're at, because part of the healing process in an abuse situation is taking that power back for yourself and choosing your path forward and choosing how you're going to move forward with your life and your situation. And we have to respect that everyone is going to come to us at a different point in that particular journey. And so that's something that we really focus on at the Family Justice Center. Now, the way it works is that when someone comes into the FJC, they fill out a very brief intake form. We scan and make sure that we don't have any conflict working with this individual. More than 95% of people that come in are perfectly fine. And once we know we can work with someone, we put them in one of our interview rooms, and the service providers literally come to them. The way that we're set up is we are a co-location of service providers that work with Montgomery County, that work for the state, like that work for the state's attorney's office, the police department, all these different county agencies, as well as community nonprofits. Because the thing is, we all have a role to play in victim services, and there's no single service provider that's going to be able to address the entirety of anyone's needs. And so we all live together under one roof, and that roof serves, or that building serves as a walk-in facility for victims of intimate partner violence and their families. So we're able to, once they come in, we can put them in a room. There's also a family area where they can get something to eat, something to drink. There's a playroom for their children. We put them in an interview room, and we literally bring the service provider to them. Everyone who comes in is also assigned a victim assistant or client assistant from my team. I mentioned them a little bit earlier. They are the primary point of contact for anyone who comes in. So no matter what services you're taking advantage of, you're going to have one point of contact that you can keep coming back to that's going to know all the details about your case. The last thing I want to mention about our program is that we have the ability to do video conferencing. It's particularly important right now. We have a video conferencing program that allows us to have a direct closed circuit video link with the circuit court and the district court. What that means, if someone wants to file for a protective order, a civil protective order with the court, they can come to us and we can facilitate that protective order hearing from the safety of the FJC, so that individual does not have to go to the courthouse to get their protective order. Now, this actually leads pretty directly into the last thing I want to mention, which is differences during the COVID-19 public health crisis. Right now, our video conference protective order program is actually on hold. All new protective order filings are being held at the district court commissioner's office, not with the judges. And unfortunately, we do not have a video link with the commissioner's office. But once the social isolation orders are lifted and court procedures are back to normal, I know a lot of people are going to have reservations about going to the courthouse with so many people, reservations about their health. And at that point, the FJC video conferencing program will be 100% back to being operational. Also, during the COVID-19 public health crisis, the Family Justice Center remains open. Our operating hours are Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5. We are still providing all of the same services that we normally would. There are some social distancing measures in place. All of our staff are wearing masks at all times. Many times, if someone is brought into an interview room, we'll have a staff member call into the room as opposed to going in person. But all of the services that we're providing are still the same. This is an essential service. This is a critical time. With social isolation orders, people are literally being forced to quarantine with people who are abusing them. And so we want to make sure that we're here for those people. The Family Justice Center can be reached by phone at 240-773-0444 during those business hours, Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5. I'll repeat that for posterity, for the recording. 240-773-0444. And I see Debbie's sharing one of our cards here with our information on it. You'll also notice below that phone number is an email address. We've set up a dedicated safe email address for people who are being victimized who can't safely make a phone call. If you're isolated in your house with your abuser, you may not be able to make a phone call, but you might be able to send an email. And so if someone sends an email to safe@montgomerycountymd.gov, that email is monitored by myself and a few of my management staff. And so we will reach out to you and we will coordinate being able to provide services in the safest and healthiest way possible. That is really all of my talking points, Debbie. Again, thank you all so much for being here. And obviously I'll be sticking around for questions at the end. Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks, Tom. The card that I just popped up is the card that we've been distributing through the public awareness campaign. And I'll talk a little bit at the conclusion of the opening remarks about ways that you can help. I'm gonna ask Rafiah Prince, Dr. Prince, to share a few opening remarks with us now, please. Rafiah, you have to unmute. I think you're still muted. There you go. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me on the panel today. I'm happy to share some information about the program that I work for and share the panel with my colleagues. Debbie had mentioned before that I work with the Victim Assistance in Sexual Assault Program with the acronym VASAP. And we're actually under this big umbrella called Trauma Services, which is comprised of VASAP and also the Abused Persons Program. First, I'll talk a little bit about APP, which is the acronym for the Abused Persons Program, and then I'll talk some about VASAP. At the Abused Persons Program, we provide counseling, victim advocacy, groups for intimate partner violence, and we also have a program there that helps with offenders. We do an abuser intervention program for offenders to help minimize domestic violence incidents by working with them. We also have the BAK, which is the Betty Ann Kroenke shelter in the county, and this shelter is a place for high lethality, high risk domestic violence victims to be able to go for safety, to stay, to get on their feet, to avoid domestic violence situations. We also have the Safe Passage Center. This is a center where high lethality domestic violence relationships or people that are separating that have peace or protective orders can go to exchange their children in a safe place, and also to have monitored exchanges, monitored visits. So you can go and visit with your children when the family is separated in a safe place. That's just the Abused Persons Program in a nutshell. And then we have VASAP, which is a rape crisis program, but it's also a crime victims program where we see any type of victim of crime in the county, from physical assault to stalking, you name it. Some of the stuff that you see on the news, or we are the ones, or one of the ones that are out helping these victims. We also there provide the counseling, psychiatry, group, victim advocacy as well. We also have a public education program where we go out into the to Montgomery County public schools, the 10th grade health classes, and we provide education on sexual assault prevention and bystander intervention. We also have at VASAP, let me make sure I get everything, the outreach program, the volunteer program, and that program meets the victims of sexual assault or domestic violence in the hospital or police stations, at the hospital during the forensic exams, or at the police station during any type of incident of reporting that they would like to do. We coordinate with all facets that victims may need. We try and do some case management as well. Debbie, do I have time to show like a little video or? Okay.
And actually, and Rafiah, while we're taking a quick pause while you're pulling that up, I'm having a little bit of trouble typing into the chat function for some reason. I probably need to restart my computer, which I'm not going to do right now. But if you have questions as we're going, the idea was to have a conversation. It's a little bit challenging on Zoom. So if you have a question, we can interject the questions as we go. Definitely want to make this, something that enables you to get the information that you want and need. So please feel free to do that. I can see the chat, but again, for some reason, I'm not able to chat into it. So thanks so much. Okay, go ahead.
Great. This video just talks a small bit about our history, and it also talks about the volunteer program that we have. And it gives you a little snapshot of what we do. And if it doesn't work, then we can skip it. You guys give me a heads up if you can see it or not and hear it. Hold on one second.
It was an effort that started in the 1976. 4 women actually banded together. One of them worked for the Maryland delegate legislation and also was a county resident. And they started looking at victims of sexual assault and their needs here in Montgomery County, and realized that we didn't have a sexual assault program that was dedicated to sexual assault victims, decrying the fact that Montgomery County is the only jurisdiction in the metropolitan area without a formal center for victims of sexual assault. 4 county women this week called for the establishment of a county-funded $74,100 sexual assault center. County Executive Gleason started what we are called the Community Crisis Center in Bethesda. And there he put together the previously formed Abused Persons Program that started in 1976. Then we put the Sexual Assault Services there in 1977 together with the Crisis Center. One of the big milestones that I remember for our program was when we merged. The Victim Advocate Program lost its manager, and then we had to merge Sexual Assault Service.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually ask you to pause it if you wouldn't mind.
The second merger that really comes to my mind is when we merged with the Abused Person.
We are all going on the fly here, and I noticed that it was about 5 minutes long. So what I'm going to suggest, for in the interest of time, is that you put the link to the video in the chat, and then if people want to learn more, they can go and click on the video, and then they can learn a little bit more about the history. I just want to make sure I'm mindful of the time that we have time for questions from the group. Thank you so much. And to answer the question that just went into the chat, you should be able, everyone should be able to put questions in now if they so choose.
Hold on one second. I'm gonna have to unshare my screen somehow.
There should be a box to click on it.
It was an app.
Hold on one second.
I think I just stopped it. Did I stop it?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
So for everybody who's listening and watching and attending, yes, we're figuring some of these things out. I thought chat was automatic for everybody, but apparently not. So I believe I activated it all except the telephone call-ins. And yeah, and so you should be able to chat now. It was same for the panelists. So I think Zoom got too secure.
Okay, looks like we got a response. Wonderful. Thank you so much for confirming that.
I'll send the link so you can watch the video. It's really, it shares a lot about the volunteers and more about the program.
Wonderful. Do you have anything else to add, Rafiah, before we have Jessica give a few opening remarks?
Yeah, I would say like during this time, we're still up and running. We're still providing services to victims of sexual assault. We're still reporting to the hospital to victims of sex assault and domestic violence, providing counseling. Our crisis center is still open. People can walk in to the crisis center. And we have some phone numbers. Let me grab them really quick.
And we can post those in the chat as well.
Yeah.
Rafiah, wonderful. Thank you so much. You know, and the crisis center number was on that card that I shared. And I think, Sylvia, if possible, if there's a way to email folks after, I'm happy to send around some additional websites and information sheets. As I said, the Family Justice Center website links to everyone else's websites, including to HHS, and more information on VASAP and on the abused persons program so that we can make sure people have the knowledge. I think the reason that we're sharing all these resources and why it's so important with this group in particular is, as community leaders that are on this call, we really want to engage you in the process of letting your networks know that this information is out there, and that people can access it. It's kind of now more than ever. You know, you may be reading in the national news, there's been reports, and I get a feed that gives me information from around the country on what people are seeing in different jurisdictions. And domestic violence is a great concern right now. Child abuse is a great concern right now. Sexual assault is a great concern right now because of the isolation and because people are literally in their homes. A lot of the typical reporting streams that we have are not available. Teachers, mental health professionals, doctors, people aren't, friends, neighbors, people aren't seeing those people right now. And so the reporting numbers, unfortunately, are down. There was an article in the Washington Post over the weekend about child abuse, and that child abuse in our area is down. Domestic violence numbers overall, and I don't quote me on any of this, but overall have remained fairly flat, which is of concern because all other crime has gone down significantly in our county. So comparatively, the domestic violence numbers are still significant, and the serious domestic violence cases that we're seeing coming in right now is very significant. I can just tell you anecdotally, I covered the bonds hearing on Monday, basically all the people that have been arrested over the weekend. And there were 5 strangulations on the bond hearing on Monday, 5 cases where individuals in our community had been strangled. And that's of great concern to me. We don't typically see 5 in one weekend. And that's, you know, so that's sort of the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's getting reported. So to engage you in this work, to engage you in this help is particularly important.
Yeah,
Jessica, if you could share what you're seeing from your perspective as well.
I entered in the chat that everyone who registered for this session will get an email afterwards, and I'll try to compile all the resources that you guys share. Send me the card you sent by email, and I'll include that in like one big PDF with all the resources.
Perfect, Sylvia. I'll follow up with you. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Jessica.
So as Debbie said, my name is Jessica Volz. I am the Clinical Director of Forensics at Shady Grove Medical Center. I'm a forensic nurse practitioner and have a background in critical care, emergency nursing, and forensics. I have my Doctor of Nursing practice and have served in various roles in the forensic unit since 2011.
I see a hand raised from Susan Dankoff. Was there a question that you wanted to ask immediately? Sorry, Jessica, or can we hold for a moment and then we'll have Jessica speak? I think let's do that. Sorry, I'm just figuring out this as well. Jessica, why don't you continue and then we'll go back to Susan's question. We won't forget you.
Okay.
Sorry.
You want me to continue?
Yes, please. Sorry.
No problem. So we are a team of 9 forensic nurse examiners who are licensed and certified, and 2 nurse practitioners. We are the only center in the county that provides this service, and we provide services, specialized forensic medical examinations, medical care, and treatment. Many require special lab work, STI testing, pregnancy prevention, and radiology studies. We work on safety planning, including referrals to community agencies, and connection with wraparound services. So as Tom said, we're all a team. Everyone really works together that you see on this panel, and even beyond this panel, and making sure that if we're the first point, touch point, or the second or third in the chain, that we're making sure that we communicate, of course, with patients' permission, to our community partners to keep them safe and make sure they have the resources that they need. And we provide all of these services for survivors of sexual assault, human trafficking, we have an elder physical abuse, sexual abuse and neglect program, one for child physical abuse, sexual abuse and neglect, physical and sexual intimate partner abuse, toxicology testing, and we have a specialized program for non-fatal strangulation as well. So all of these services are available regardless of when the abuse or assault took place. So if someone's presenting and they might be outside of a time frame when they would maybe have DNA collection or evidence collection, we'll still see that person and make sure that they have all of the other services and that specialized medical care. So we are available now 24 and staffed actually, which is unique that Montgomery County is lucky to have access to 24/7 in-house forensic nurses. We, to my knowledge, are the only program in the state of Maryland that has that. We offer phone consultations and now offer appointments as well. I'll give all of our contact information at the end. So because we're the only center in the county that offers these services, we do respond to the Germantown Emergency Center and White Oak Medical Center. They're all part of Adventist Healthcare. Having said that, we understand that people might present to other places and need our services. So we have specialized equipment. And obviously, because of that, we would prefer that patients come to us. But if patients are at another hospital in the county and they are unable or unwilling for whatever reason to come to us, then we are always happy to go out to them and see them in the facility that they are seeking their health care. We work, obviously, aside from medical treatment, forensic examinations, and documentation, we really do work with our community partners on prevention efforts. Debbie and Tom spoke about the domestic violence fatality review team and the sexual assault response team. We are part of those teams as well. So that's a little bit of the background of our services and what we do. And I know a lot of people are probably very curious about how the work, especially at the hospital and within our unit, has been impacted by the COVID crisis. We have seen a steep decline in people accessing and seeking our services in the hospital. This weekend, we became very hopeful because we actually did see a pretty significant increase, sudden increase in people seeking the services. And the reason that makes us hopeful is because we know that this is still occurring, that abuse is occurring across the entire lifespan, and that people simply aren't seeking the service. We've had several patients who have expressed after coming into the hospital that they were really reluctant and on the fence about whether or not to come in at all. So we're really happy that we saw so many people, and it's remained pretty steady throughout this week. So we're hopeful that that trend will continue. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about some of the modifications that we have made at an entity level, at a hospital level, at a unit level. And some of those modifications are working out so well, actually, that I'm glad to report they're going to be here to stay. One of those is the ability to make appointments. So in the past, unless there was a follow-up visit occurring, we didn't have the ability for people to call in and make appointments. We do now, and as a result of that, we can bring people through a separate entrance. Actually, they don't even have to go enter through the hospital. They enter through the building next door. Those referrals and appointments can be made with the aid of child welfare services, adult protective services through VASAP. We get referrals now from police calling and helping their victims that they're working with make appointments with us, and at the Family Justice Center. We are also supporting the Treehouse at this time. So the Treehouse is the Child Advocacy Center in Montgomery County, and they are currently closed. So we, in order to make sure anyone who is a child abuse victim has that medical care that they need, and then referrals to the Treehouse. We've worked with them on the appointment front, and then also just making sure that they have access to us, and we're able to provide services for their clients as well right now, medical services. Additionally, as I talked about, bypassing the emergency department if that's medically appropriate. So that's not only part of the appointment system, but if someone comes in through the front door and they're reporting to that front door nurse that they meet criteria for our service, which would be someone, for example, reporting that they were sexually assaulted, that nurse now, instead of having them go through the emergency department, will call us. We'll come and get the patient, and we kind of work it backwards. So either myself or the other nurse practitioner, this is mostly during daytime and evening hours, will medically clear the patient and determine then if they need continued emergency services, or as it is most of the time, can be treated right in the forensic medical unit and discharged home. We have obviously a masking policy, so every patient, employee, visitor, anyone who puts a foot in the door must have a mask on. We have a no visitor policy, so people who are coming into the hospital for any medical reason are not allowed to have a visitor. If it's a minor child, they can have an adult parent or guardian with them, but in that case, our forensic unit has a separate family room that person can wait in. In the hospital in general, we have the leadership really has worked tirelessly to cohort patients on certain floors, even to the point that we now have, we've gone from 1 ICU to 3. And that's really to separate patients. So we have a COVID ICU. They have built physical walls and barriers in the hospital all over the past 8 weeks. This has been done. We have general infection control procedures, obviously, and people are going into these negative air pressure rooms if they are being ruled out or are positive for COVID. We have 2 daily safety meetings, so we're making sure every day that we're doing everything that we can twice. We have a special COVID meeting and then a general safety meeting where we're even checking on supplies of PPE. Our unit and the hospital, Adventist Healthcare as a whole, does not have a shortage of PPE right now, so we're very fortunate that we're protected and we're therefore able to protect our patients. And in preparation, if there ever were to be a shortage, our sterile processing is actually being very, very prepared, and they're taking the N95 masks that are being used and sterilizing them in case there is, God forbid, a PPE shortage. We're prepared for that as well. We do have now, we just opened our brand new unit on the 3rd floor of the hospital that includes 2 private exam rooms and a private family room, as well as a separate office for the nurses. So anyone who might have seen our space before, this is a huge difference for us, and it came just in time so that we can really take this patient population out of the emergency department. We continue to have live interpreters. They are masked, but they do respond to the bedside, and they're in-house. Spanish interpreters are in-house, and other interpreters we do call in through an agency. And we've really worked to modify the response with our community partners as well. So working with, Dr. Prince, and her team that victim advocates are still accessible to patients, but we're protecting the victim advocate and the patient by keeping the victim advocate out of the hospital and accessible by phone, and they are accessible 24 hours a day. Working with detectives so that they have the ability to call in and refer. They're also using a separate entrance if they need to respond to the hospital. So that's really great that they're able to come right upstairs, obviously masked, working with the patients if necessary. In fact, we've had several instances now where detectives are able to complete their interview right in the hospital, again, minimizing the number of contacts that the patient needs to make, with even as simple as, things like leaving their house. They don't have to go to the police department. The police don't have to come to their house in order to do those interviews. So we've modified not only our internal response, but our response with our community partners. And we are all keeping in very close contact to make sure that we are closing the communication loop, I would say, and making sure that, no one is being missed, that everyone has all of those, has touched all of those points of service just as they ordinarily would. And we've really worked to get this message out. As Debbie was saying, the numbers have really declined. We've done a couple of radio spots, talking to TV news outlets and print. And today, actually, Adventist Healthcare is putting out a social media campaign that focuses on the services of the Forensic Medical Unit so that people know we're here. And not just that we're here, but that they shouldn't be afraid to access our services because of all of these things that we're really doing to work hard to keep them safe. So I know that was a lot. We've done a lot over the past couple of weeks, especially. And I just wanted to make sure, for some people, hearing that one little detail might be the difference between coming and not. So I definitely want people to know we're here to keep you safe in many ways.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for your words, and thank you to all of our panelists. I see that we have a couple of questions. Delegate Crutchfield, there's the question that was out of some information on that. So Tom, why don't you start?
Sure. So the demographic information that we've seen in the past couple of weeks is pretty consistent with the demographics that we see any other time. Generally speaking, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we work with between 1,600 and 1,700 people in a given year. Of those individuals, and that's unique individual people, obviously, certainly people are returning for additional services. Demographically, about 30 to 40% of those individuals are Hispanic, of Hispanic ethnicity. And of those, about half are Spanish only speaking. Also, that about 90% of the people we work with are female. And the largest age range, I think the majority of folks that we work with are between the age of 18 and 35. So that's what I know off the top of my head.
Okay. Thank you, Tom and Jessica.
Our demographics have been pretty consistent as well. But I will say what we've been seeing that is, I think, pretty significantly different than what we had been seeing in the past is that we've been having maybe mothers who come in that are presenting for abuse, and then it turns out this is a family affair, that the children are also now being abused, which there's always been this overlay of, and this is completely anecdotal, and what my observation is, we've always seen this overlay of intimate partner violence and child abuse in homes of families. What's different right now, at least what we're seeing in our unit, is it's almost every person who's presenting that has children living in their home. The children are now also being abused. So we're serving families. We've always served families holistically, but now there are more families needing to be served that way, if that makes sense.
Well,
Yes, and Rafiah?
What we're seeing, pretty similar demographics. We've seen an uptick in not only the intimate partner violence, but family violence. We've seen a lot more adult children or that live with their parents being victimized. We're also seeing with the domestic violence cases and sex assault cases, they seem to be a little bit more violent than what we typically see. We're seeing more strangulation, more severe injuries, which I'm sure Jessica could talk more about.
Yeah.
So that's what we're seeing.
Thank you. Thank you. So I hope that answers the question that was posed. There's another question in the chat that says, what do we do if we suspect a neighbor or friend is having issues of these types, but we don't want to pry or embarrass them by our suspicions? One thing that I would say initially, and then again, I'll turn to my direct service provider colleagues, is you can call the number 2 or email safe@montgomerycountymd.gov. That is actually a primary part of the campaign that we launched, is to encourage individuals who are concerned about their family, friends, neighbors, et cetera, to call and get guidance. Every case is different. There's not really a cookie cutter answer. One of the things that, has been the experience that I've had and sort of the work that I've done is that when someone is in the middle of one of these situations, the last thing they need or want is to be told what to do. And that the most important thing is to support them, to offer services, not services from you, but to let them know that resources are available and that you're there to support them no matter what. But I would encourage all of you, if you have concerns or if you, put out the word to others, if they have concerns, they can call into these numbers and they can get advice on how to help their neighbor, friend, family member, et cetera. So they don't have to do it alone or wonder, and they can do it all anonymously. They don't have to reveal the person that they're concerned about, that sort of thing. So I don't know who wants to go first and maybe expand on my answer.
I'll just very briefly echo everything that Debbie said in terms of the importance of reaching out and the ability to call the different service providers like the Family Justice, everyone here. And I would just add that someone who's been involved in a lot of the Family Justice Center, Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, who's a good friend of ours, who's an advocate on this issue. She is a survivor of intimate partner violence. And she has said repeatedly that the way that she was able to get out, and the only reason she was able to get out, was because a neighbor noticed what was going on and reached out to her. Mm-hmm. And I know she says that every time she speaks about this issue. So I'll, I guess, kind of say that on her behalf, but echoing everything Debbie said and then including that to show how important it is.
Yeah, and actually to add on to that, last week when we launched the campaign, a young woman spoke about her experience. She's also a survivor of domestic violence, and her work colleague was the one that identified it and asked her if she was okay and said that he was here for her. And then they began to talk a lot, and together they made, some plans for her to get help. And he was just there to support her. And that's not an uncommon story. I mean, in fact, with elder abuse, I think over 90% of the cases are identified by someone other than the senior themselves. I think it might be 96%, some astronomically high number. Our vulnerable populations to include, seniors, vulnerable adults, those who are victimized in any way, shape, or form, child abuse, intimate partner violence, the importance of what they call the bystander, the person that is, sort of on the outside but looking in, is critically important to helping individuals that are in these situations. There's been lots of studies, lots of preventative measures, and that's why it's a critical part of the campaign that we launched. Rafiah or Jessica, do you have anything to add? Rafiah, Jessica, no? Okay.
Well, just one thing. If you are, let's say, living in like an apartment building or close quarters or in a neighborhood, and you are hearing violence and you are afraid, that you should call the police.
100%. Thank you for that clarification.
There to come out to help, to check on people to make sure that people are safe. Because as we know, we're all locked in, and sometimes there isn't a voice outside for that. So that's always an option as well.
And also, if you feel like it doesn't raise to the level of a call to 911, and you're concerned, like particularly about kids, you can call child welfare. And again, it can be anonymous, and you can figure out next steps from there. But you know, I always say that you should err on the side of calling and reaching out. That's because you don't have to necessarily identify exactly what's happening. You don't have to identify who you are, but you can get resources and information from professionals that are in this space. Jessica.
Sorry.
Jessica, we can't hear you. Go ahead.
I can't tell you how many people we have worked with who have in particular been strangled, and you know, we ask, why do you think it stopped? And frequently it will be that police were knocking on the door because a neighbor called. So you really could save someone's life.
You know, it's interesting, going back to the demographics question earlier, you know, one of the things that I often think about, having been in this field for about, actually April, 20 years, I was a prosecutor this month, it's been 20 years. And one of the things that I think about is when we look at demographics, in some ways they're kind of skewed, because individuals that live co-located, you know, in an apartment, in a townhouse, or in an urban area, there may be more opportunity for others to intervene or call 911 than in our single family homes throughout the county. It doesn't mean that it's happening less, which is why it becomes even more important for us to notice the small, subtle things, and to be checking in on our friends and family. So that's something that I've just sort of noticed consistently. There's another question that says, how are special needs, mentally ill, LGBTQ seniors accommodated in the facilities that are offered? So I don't know who wants to start with an answer. Sort of round robin it again. Tom, if you want to go, and
Sure.
Rafiah and Jessica. Okay.
Sure. So dealing with special populations, and you know, specific populations is something that the whole county takes very seriously, and the Family Justice Center is no exception. Everyone who works there, everyone who's on my team, receives specialized training in dealing with all different types of people and serving all different types of people, and how their individual situation might impact or raise barriers for them receiving help or receiving services or following through on certain things. So for example, we have great training from other nonprofits in the community on working with victims who are part of the LGBTQ community. And some of the considerations there are that they may not have some of the familial support or the support from, you know, their parents or other family members that other people might have. And so, you know, a safety plan for one of those individuals may not be able to rely as much on a family member if the family member isn't supportive of their lifestyle. Working with people who are seniors, we have to make sure that we have transportation options. Family Justice Center has a ride to safety program that enables us to cab people either to or from the Family Justice Center if they either can't use public transportation, or if they're not accessible to it, or if they don't have a vehicle they can use. So we have all of these different systems in place and trainings in place for the staff to make sure that we're able to adequately and appropriately serve anyone that comes through the door who needs our help.
I guess I'll go next.
Yeah, please, Rafiah, thank you.
We have, right now on staff, we have a therapist who we specifically use to service clients that have mental, that have been diagnosed with disabilities. We also, you know, as Tom was saying, we provide training. We have a diverse staff to meet the needs of our clients. We have transportation for the folks that need it. Yeah, so we do our best to accommodate, you know, whatever people bring, and make it a comfortable space for them to work on their trauma and whatever their victimization or domestic violence issue.
Great, thank you. Jessica. Jessica, we can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me
There
now?
you go. Yeah.
Okay. Like Tom and Rafiah, you know, we work to ensure that everyone on our team has specialized training for various populations. And we also really work to try to ensure that what I say, the right nurse gets to the right person. So we have certain people on our team that we just know, hey, this population is their forte. They always do so well. And so we make efforts to, even if we have to call someone in, we try to make every effort that we can to make sure that the right nurse gets with that patient. We also really work to acknowledge that every individual is going to have some type of barrier, identifying early on what those barriers are to their care or to making sure they have access to community resources. Like Tom and Rafiah said, transportation is a very common one. So we will do whatever we need to do and just keep at it until the problem is at least resolved to a point that it's manageable. And we also pull in our other supports. So we're fortunate, at least at Shady Grove Medical Center, that we're attached to what was Adventist Behavioral Health and is now behavioral health. It's part of Shady Grove Medical Center. And we really don't hesitate to engage with those services. And aside from those things, we really just try to stay abreast of what community resources are available for all different special populations, and make sure that if we become aware of a new one, that we engage with them and develop a connection with them in the event that one of our patients need their services.
Thank you so much. There was one final question that was posed in the chat. Would love to know how all of you cope and and do self-care when dealing with what we do. You know, I can tell you that I do a lot of training around the country and also attend a lot of trainings, and almost every conference that I attend actually has a piece on vicarious trauma. Which now research has demonstrated, and again, my colleagues can probably speak to this better than I can, but research has demonstrated that it's not even really vicarious, that it's really, it's primary trauma that providers in this area are dealing with. And there are a lot of resources for us as professionals as well. We do a lot of collaborative work and support each other. I can tell you that, you know, my colleagues that you see on the screen are a vital part of my support system in making sure that, you know, I know that I'm not in this alone. The law enforcement, you know, prosecutorial piece is one part, but we're all working together, you know, in all of our capacities to try to help people in the community to ensure safety and justice and accountability and healing. And from my perspective, and I certainly can't speak for everyone, from my perspective, I find so much of the work that we do to be uplifting and to helping people heal. You know, these things statistically we know are happening in our community, and the more people that we can reach, the more that we can message around the fact that you are not alone, and the more people that we can help, that to me keeps me going every single day. To want to make a small part of that difference. And so, you know, I also exercise a lot and, you know, try to walk my dog. I have a dog, you know, it's my service animal, you know, whatever. But you know, those are sort of the broader things that I think about in terms of sort of self-care and how we live in this space and do this work every day. So I don't know if anyone else wants to comment.
Sure. So at the Family Justice Center, again, I would echo everything that Debbie said. I would also add that it's important, at least for advocates, for victim advocates, in our field, we have to understand that we are advocates for people who are being abused and for people who are going through severe trauma. But it's important to not take that work home with you and to understand that you as an advocate is not the only defining feature about yourself. You're much more than an advocate. You're also a parent or a dog parent, or someone who likes to run, or someone who likes to play the violin. I don't know. So being sure to find time to put the advocate piece of yourself away temporarily and just enjoy life. Also, as Debbie mentioned, we are each other's support system. I know about every other month it's been disrupted now, but my team and I try to do a team building session every month or every other month. So it might just be something like a get to know you game, or we have an ice cream day, or I had a friend of ours come in and do a yoga session, yoga for advocates, and poses and stuff that you can do while sitting at your desk. Just things like little self-care things like that.
So as a therapist, I always, and even with the therapists I supervise, I say, practice what you preach. It's easy to tell your clients, oh, you should, exercise, or you should, go through what their strengths are. I think also too, you have to look at your own strengths as well, and really, balance all of it. It can be a lot, and especially right now for everybody, at times it can feel like a lot. Our norms have changed. A lot of us have been forced to change everything that we're doing, and just some things I would say is like, don't beat yourself up if you don't run, to release energy in a day. It's okay. If you decide to sleep in a little bit and cuddle with your dog, do it. Don't be so hard on yourself, because you guys, we're in a very unique situation, and it's changing everything around us. But there's some beautiful things that are happening as well. One, and I'll be short, I won't say too much more, but one thing, the oceans are cleaner. They're seeing life that they haven't seen in decades. Some of our clients are reporting being at home, they've really had the opportunity to do some inside work, and even outside work, changing their spaces to feel more comfortable. So there's, you have to not get too bogged down on all the bad things that are happening, and just remind yourself that there's a lot of beauty. And when we all come out of our homes and get to hug each other again, it's coming. It's going to feel really good.
Jessica.
Follow up that. So for my team, obviously, I mean, we really are each other's support. Again, the people on the screen, knowing that you have other people that care. I don't think anyone gets into this type of work if you don't really care. And we are not only lucky enough to ourselves care, but to know that we're surrounded by people who genuinely care. And I think that we also take time every day. I know we take time every day to reflect on how purposeful our work is. And no matter what, if you feel like you're always doing the best that you can, and that you're surrounded by people who will do the best that they can for people, even if it's not perfect, we're gonna give it our best effort, and that the work is purposeful. And I mean, I know for me and my team, that's enough, it seems, every day. So
I want to thank Jessica, Rafiah, Tom, and Montgomery Women for giving us the opportunity to share this information with you and to engage you in this work. And I know Sylvia will be sending a follow-up with some information and resources, and we definitely will benefit, our whole community will benefit from you pushing out some of this information to your networks. And we are all here as resources if you need us. Please reach out, and look forward to hopefully seeing you in person sometime soon. And again, Sylvia, thank you to you for coordinating this with us today.
Hey, you're welcome. And like I said, Jackie and I are program co-chairs for Montgomery Women. So it did take a village to get this accomplished. And again, as I've been saying in the chat, so appreciative of all of you. As we leave, I want to make sure everybody knows that Montgomery Women will be doing more virtual events in the weeks, hopefully not months, but in the weeks ahead. And so you can find out about all of our events, the updated information about them at our website at montgomerywomen.org. Since this program, I continued to record, even though in the beginning I said I wouldn't, because the questions didn't seem to be personal. They were more information driven or information seeking. So I kept it recording. Since people will be watching this after the fact of some of these dates, always go to montgomerywomen.org for the latest info. But I will say upcoming in May of 2020, we have our annual meeting has gone virtual. So we will have our annual meeting in just a couple of weeks, May 11th at 7 p.m. And we say find the invite at the website, we say, bring your favorite drink. So we'll have a virtual cocktail and annual meeting happening then. I just saw an article that says, are we drinking too much during this time? So I had to laugh at that. The other program for May is going to be May 27th. We had a women's leadership discussion scheduled for March. We postponed that. It will now be virtual. And on May 27th at 7 p.m. And that's more information will go out about that. There's a podcast/article to watch or listen to, and then we'll be discussing that during that session. And it's going to be about women in leadership, with how we can make effective decisions as leaders. So that will be the 27th of May. So with all of that, again, thank you. And I am going to shut the recording